Good afternoon. It's so great to be here, and thank you for that very warm introduction, Melissa. You know, it's not often when I am out giving remarks in the introduction then that someone can say I am a good friend, and it's really true. Today, that is really true. So I am pleased to be here and feel like I'm actually visiting a neighbor because I live quite close by. I reside about 15 minutes away from campus, just on the other side of the Maryland, D.C. line in Northeast. So thank you for having me here. I am reminded that people often in speeches of more than 2 minutes only listen to the first few things you have to say and the last things you have to say because they're waiting for you to end. So I want to start with a quote. I'd like to share with you a quote that I am inspired by, that I think is a message that I hope everyone takes away today. Example is not the main thing in influencing others. It is the only thing. And I truly believe that statement by Albert Schweitzer, a famous philosopher. I think that it is a version of the much more famous quote about being the change that you seek to make in the world. And I would encourage you all today as you leave here to think about what change you want to create and how you can truly take action in the here and now. I believe that many things are possible. And as we leave February, which is Black History Month, and we enter March, which is Women's History Month, there has been a lot of talk in many circles. It's hard to escape on TV, on radio, and probably even in your classrooms. The many stories of how people have overcome challenges and trials and tribulations. But for me, it's quite personal. My parents came from extremely modest beginnings. And I'm fortunate that I had a lot of access to resources, access to education as a child. But I literally am the granddaughter of a sharecropper from Weldon, North Carolina, which is a very rural part of that state. And my father had a vision of what would be possible. I was born in 1965, and yes, I know that ages me in this crowd, but I was born in 1965 in the heart of the civil rights movement, when in many places in this country, my mother could not get onto a bus and sit with me in any part of the bus that she wanted. And this country has seen incredible change. So when I think about what's possible, I think about the type of change that has occurred for my own family and in what is a lifetime, my own lifetime. So what will be possible in your lifetimes? I believe that the economy and the new economy, it is the movement of this era. Social enterprise is leading the way to a paradigm shift in how we think about capitalism in this country and globally. And at Calvert Foundation, we truly believe that we are leading a movement. We are empowering investors so that they can empower communities and causes that they care about. We are making it possible for everyday individuals to take their money and align their money with their values. I have a colleague who's very fond of talking about how this generation doesn't like to purchase chapstick without thinking about how it was made, who made it, was it done with fair trade principles, and if you care that much about your chapstick, Shouldn't you care that much and more about how your money is being invested? And it may feel like taking a chance to do something different with your money than what's done traditionally in traditional capital markets and traditional investment. But I would present to you the case that at this stage of your lives, this is when you can take risk. And it may feel like a small sum can't make a difference, but many, many, many small sums added together will create social change. And so I encourage you to think about how you use your money and how you invest your money even today, and how you can be an impact investor. So Calvert Foundation is a nonprofit, 501c3. We're actually a public charity. And we make loans, not grants, but loans, to social enterprises and to other nonprofits all around the world. Those organizations take the money that we lend to them, and they build affordable housing. They make it possible for entrepreneurs to borrow small loans. They help finance community facilities like healthcare centers, like charter schools, like daycare for kids. And all that is possible because 7,000 individual investors made a decision to invest in the Calvert Foundation Community Investment Note. We raise our capital from everyday individuals in amounts as small as $20. And I'll say that again, $20, which means that every single person in this room can make an investment in a community or a cause that they care about. And small sums, many, many, many of them added up, make a difference. At Calvert Foundation, it's added up to $230 million, which we make available to 190 organizations covering all 50 states and 80 countries across the globe. So Melissa asked me today to talk not just about Calvert Foundation, but also a little bit about my story and some of the risks that I've taken in my career. One of the things I'd like to encourage the audience today is to think about the long trajectory of a career. I like to think, roughly 25 years that I'm only halfway through, and that I've got another 25 years of my career. And during that time, I've worked in the for-profit sector, I've worked in the government, and currently I'm in the nonprofit sector. And I think that experience has enriched me, not just personally, but also professionally, in that I'm better in my role as the CEO at Calvert Foundation because of those experiences that I've had across many sectors. But it wasn't easy. Some people would say that an MBA working for the federal government is an oxymoron. I would not be one of those people, but there were people who, when I said I was going to go work in government, was wondering why I had wasted all that time and money on an MBA if I was just going to go be a Fed. And it was one of the most amazing experiences that I've ever had. I learned more in that 18-month stint at the National Economic Council than I had learned in other prior private sector experiences. And one of the things that you find is when you stretch yourself to move into a new sector is that you're given opportunity that you might not have had if you'd stayed on the same track the entire time. So take the chance, take the risk, do something that might not seem traditional for those of you who are getting business degrees, whether it's an undergraduate business degree or an MBA. Take a risk to do something to stretch yourself. It was also a risk to take this job. And people often find it surprising that I view it that way. But it was a risk because I'd never been a CEO before. My board of directors took a chance on me, and I was taking a chance that I could get it right. I also am a working parent. And for me, this is a big job. It's consuming, it's demanding, and it involves a lot of balance with my daytime job and what is famously known as the second shift when I get home. But it's been worth every bit of the risk that it would be too much. And I want to encourage all of you, whether you're men or women, because men can be parents too, they are, that as you think about balance and you think about what opportunities that you want to pursue, take the risk, take the chance, and you will find a way, you will make a way. And what seems like it can't be done can be done. I am in the business of what's possible. I am not in the business of what's impossible. I'd like to take a moment to also talk about what you can do. I encourage folks, when I started, to lead by example, which is really what Albert Schweitzer is saying in that quote, is lead by example. And how can you be an example for the change that you want to see in the world? How can you take action now, today, even as you walk out of this room? And you can start by thinking about your relationship with money. Money is a powerful force. And one of the most famous quotes in the world, I think, is, "Money is the root of all evil." And one day that was just kind of spinning in my head, is money really the root of all evil? And I went and I looked up the quote, because you hear it so often, or at least I've heard it many times. And it turns out that the actual quote is, "The love of money is the root of all evil." And at Calvert Foundation, we believe that money can be a force for good. It is a very powerful influencer across the globe. And we believe it's possible to align your values with how you invest your money, and think about how you're doing that in your day-to-day life, around your purchases, and whether you're making fair trade purchases or not, around how you've invested even your cash, and is some of it in a community banking system? Is some of it invested in Microplace or Kiva, where you can take small sums and have money being used as a force for good? You can also advocate on your campus for change. Universities and their endowments are some of the largest investors in the world. When you aggregate all of the money that's held by healthcare systems, universities, and foundations, it's not billions, it's trillions of dollars. And you can be a voice for change. You can be an agent for change in raising your hand to say, as a stakeholder at your university, you want at least some of the money that's held in the endowment to go for good. And that is happening at universities all across the country. What other types of action can you take now, can you take today? You can think about careers in social enterprise and in impact investing. There are many options and many resources. The center here at University of Maryland is one of those resources. You can join an organization that utilizes impact investing or provides impact investing. And I just did a very short list of the organizations that we lend to at Calvert Foundation that are based locally. They include Habitat for Humanity, Montgomery Housing Partnership, Action International, Finca International, and Enterprise Community Partners. So you don't even have to go far to find options where social enterprise is a possibility for a career. And then I think last and not least, even if you plan to go into a traditional for-profit career, or job immediately after school, which I completely understand. I had a lot of loans when I graduated from college at University of Pennsylvania, and my first job was at Chemical Bank, which probably very few people in this room have heard of. But it used to be a money center bank, and I said that to somebody once, and they were like, what's a money center bank? Because they don't really exist anymore either. But it was a very large traditional commercial bank that eventually became what's known today as J.P. Morgan Chase. And it was a traditional mainstream job, but I found a way to be an entrepreneur within the organization and to advocate for community development and be part of community development investing within even a large commercial bank. So finally, take a class in social enterprise and learn something that you didn't know before that will help you be an agent for change wherever you land once you've left the university. And so I encourage you all to be that example, to be an influencer of others, because it really is the only way that things change, when we are the example that others follow. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to my fireside chat with Melissa. We're going to keep going and have an opportunity for people to ask Q&A from the audience as well. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Lisa. So I have a few questions for Lisa, but I am certain that there are lots of questions in the audience. So if you have one, just raise your hand, and someone will bring a microphone to you, and we'll have you stand up, just introduce yourself, and ask your question. You think you got it?
Yeah, I think
Awesome.
so. Okay, can folks hear me? Or I need to? Yes, okay,
Okay, you're good. All right, so my first question is this. You talked a little bit in your keynote about the fact that you've worked in nonprofit sector, for-profit, and government. So quite a breadth of experience. Tell me a little bit about what characteristics you see in the most effective change agents within those sectors.
So, surprise, surprise, Melissa gave me these questions in advance, so I had a chance to prepare. You know, I think commitment is really important. And when I say commitment, I don't mean that you have to stay in the same work or stay in the same sector or stay in the same career. But whatever you choose in that moment, be committed to it. You know, don't do it on a wishy-washy basis. I think commitment is a quality of people who are successful generally, and certainly of people who are successful as change agents. I think you also have to be passionate, right? That without passion, that there is no way to be really good at what you do. And, you know, I have met, not surprisingly, many of my classmates out of business school became investment bankers. I have met over time some really miserable investment bankers. I've also met some investment bankers who love what they do, right? And it really is about their passion. And whatever you choose, if you're not passionate about it, I don't think that you can be successful. The last thing is persistence. And, you know, I just am amazed how persistence makes such a difference. And people can give up so easily. I'm just like shocked. And, you know, sometimes we all lead very busy lives. And so sometimes you have a good idea and you take it to somebody and you don't get an answer. It might be because that person just had 5 phone calls to return that day and they didn't get to the 6th. But your idea is a very good one, and if you call back the next day and you're at the top of the list or you happen to catch them at their desk, they'll be interested. But if you give up, then the answer is always going to be no. So persistence and determination, I think, as well, are important qualities of being a successful change agent.
Wonderful. And for all of the students taking that advice, are there certain kinds of models that you've seen? So if you're thinking about being a change agent that have worked, ways to approach blending social impact and business?
Yeah. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't say Calvert Foundation, because we really do sit at the intersection of social good or social return in communities, but also sophisticated financial services and products. And, you know, it is possible to use business tools and financial tools to achieve good. And at Calvert Foundation, we do that through a registered security called the Calvert Foundation Community Investment Note. I like to say you can walk into a Schwab storefront and ask to purchase one, and they can sell it to you, and it sits in your account like any other security. But what gets done with that capital, the proceeds of those notes, is very different than what gets done with mainstream instruments. So it really is possible to bring the two together. But I do think there are other examples. Affordable housing is a terrific example of where there's a true revenue model where cash flow is being generated, but it's being generated at a lower amount than what you can generate in a luxury housing development. And so it requires some type of subsidy, but it can be financed. So you can bring together business and social good. You know, the other thing that I find fascinating in social enterprise is that, you know, capitalism can be a powerful motivator. And sometimes people need money to be able to attribute value. And there's the famous story about malaria bed nets that when the humanitarian organizations were giving away the nets, they really couldn't get people to use them. But when they charged just a little bit, you know, just a very, very small sum, and forced people to have to come out of their pocket to pay for it, people attributed a great deal of value to them and actually used them more than when they were given away.
Those are excellent examples, great examples. And as you think about the capital markets, at least in the classes that I teach, the students are always asking questions about this growing field we call impact investing.
Yes.
And part of our challenge anytime you build a new field is certainly the vernacular, the language by which to describe it, and how we understand this full spectrum. So can you give us just a little bit of an overview about the breadth of the field of impact investing and do a little comparing and contrasting with the capital markets as most of us know it?
Yeah. No, it really has been amazing. As a pioneer in impact investing, it's been fascinating to see the evolution of terminology and the expansion of the marketplace. There was a time when we had very few, if any, competitors. We've been at this since 1995 as an organization. And impact investing, as we define it, is making investments that generate both a financial return, so you're getting back principal, and in most cases, a return on that principal, and also generating a social return. So you're providing some benefit to society, whether that's around environment, education, health, job generation, livelihood. And that's how we define impact investing. But I would say there are as many definitions as there are investors out there. Some people focus very heavily on intent, and that's how they define impact investing. Some people would contrast negative screening, where you're making investments based on certain types of investments that you don't want to make, like alcohol, tobacco. And negative screening was quite popular in the start of the social responsible investing field. And there are those who would say impact investing is where there are affirmative screens. At Calvert Foundation, we don't make that distinction because we believe that this broad work that we all do, SRI or social responsible investing, includes both positive and negative screening.
And so tell us a little bit about how this sector is going to grow, and where do you think the opportunities are for young people?
So I think the sky is the limit. When I started in this role at Calvert Foundation, I famously was going around talking about 5% for impact, which I still like that slogan because it's very catchy and it's very memorable, right? 5% for impact. But after I had said it enough times, I realized that's too limiting. Why 5%? Why not 15% or 50%? And what we are trying to make possible is at Calvert Foundation is for every investor to be an impact investor and for them to choose what makes sense in terms of an allocation for their portfolio, whether that's 5 or 15 or 50 or even 100%, which we are actually seeing some foundations move to allocations of their endowments that are 100% for impact. So I do think there will be a future where everyone will have a choice. And, I talked a little bit in my remarks about fair trade. 50 years ago, there was no option to buy fair trade coffee or tea. And today, you can hardly go anywhere. I think it's even sold in Walmart. I mean, right? You can't go anywhere, and that's not an option to choose a fair trade and organic to combine tea or coffee. And I think impact investing will be that way in the future. There will always be mainstream financial products and investment tools, and I think they will always be the predominant option in the marketplace, but I think going forward there will be many, many more choices, and it really will be possible for every investor to be an impact investor.
Excellent. Are there any?
And then you asked me something else in that question about what are the opportunities for students.
For careers. Where's the growth going to come from? Right.
I think, to be honest, I think it's tough, right? I think as students, people often say, well, we'll come back when you have experience. And then, how do you get the experience if everybody wants you to come back when you have experience? I would encourage students to look for ways that you can get that experience that maybe aren't obvious. A summer internship, a volunteer role with an organization that you can be of service to them on their board. Maybe you can't be a board member yet, but you can help staff their board. To be creative in thinking about even your school projects. As you're picking topics to write papers, write a paper. I remember we had a candidate who that was actually a very compelling part of his interview, is that he had written a paper about microfinance and spent some time thinking and learning about it, and we knew he was committed to this sector. So be creative in how you think about experience, because people will want to see that you have some commitment to impact investing before they're willing to take a chance in hiring you if you don't bring experience to the table.
That's excellent advice. Do we have any questions in the audience? I don't know, so you can just yell loud.
So, I'm Jim Sanders. I teach Social Enterprise in the part-time MBA program. My question is, your comments said that we all have institutions that we belong to where there are monies being put to work. So your comment suggests that we have the ability to do all in and alignment with our work role and how the monies are used in our institutions. So I guess the question is, thinking about ourselves in our university role or one other jobs we have, the challenge of going to our investment group and saying we should be investing in impact funds as opposed to how we're investing now raises the question of returns and social discount. So could you talk about what's the status of performance in social impact over general market? And why, when J.P. Morgan did this big study 3 years ago, it said institutional investors can now come in because it's parity, so big monies can now come into the space and do social impact. But it hasn't happened. So why is there a perceived discount still on social impact funding? And how can we go back to our university and say, put your money to Calvert as opposed to general market funds?
So I think it's an excellent question, and sometimes I say in jest that it's never going to change until there's a question on the Chartered Financial Analyst exam that asks about impact investing. I think that many people who end up in finance and investment management specifically are relatively risk adverse. And so you were asking different than what they've done before, even though the evidence shows that the return in the financial performance has been competitive. I won't say that it's always exactly the same, because there's studies that show that it is, and there's studies that show that it is not. But it certainly is competitive. And what we find at Calvert Foundation, where our note has traditionally been a below-market note, is that people are actually willing to take a little bit of a haircut on their return as individuals to get that social benefit, because they're looking for blended value. They're not concerned just about financial return. And I think as stakeholders within organizations that do invest large amounts of money, that you raise your hand, you raise your voice to say, this is important to me. You know, people write letters. There is also the ability, what we've seen across the country is that people are incorporating in the classroom, where there are investment, you know, people do mock investment pools, that people are starting to do impact investment pools to show that, in fact, the performance can be competitive. And that you also actually have seen some alumni come together on campuses. I know at Harvard, there's the Fair Harvard Fund, where some of the alumni have said, you know, we are going to put our money in a separate fund, the Fair Harvard Fund, that is socially responsible, to demonstrate to you that it can be done, and that once you, Harvard University, agree to have a fund that's focused on social impact, we will then move that money into the fund in the endowment and give it to the university. So I think there are demonstration projects that can be done that will convince some of the powers to be that this is reasonable. And I do think that eventually there'll be a tipping point, that you'll see some of the bigger players commit to do small allocations. I find it fascinating that, you know, when alternatives came on the scene, and earlier real estate as an asset class came on the scene, that investment management companies and advisors and gatekeepers were pretty quick to allow those in portfolios. And I think you will eventually see it happen in impact investing. You're starting to see it around the edges. So those would be my thoughts on how you can influence the endowments on campus.
Okay, well, I have one last question, and we're going to wrap up. And this is really about how we measure the impact of the work that we're doing. So tell us a little bit about, you discussed the financial returns and sometimes the blended returns you might see with social impact. We're all very familiar with pushes and efforts in cause marketing, in greenwashing, and so I think people in general are very sensitive to this idea that perhaps if you're putting your money in a fund, it's maybe not achieving all the things that you want, and we're probably a little bit harder on ourselves than we should be. So tell us a little bit about how impact measurement works in this space, and how do students or we learn more about what kinds of actual social returns are happening as part of these investments?
Yeah. I think it's tricky. I think that when you're talking about social investing, it is all about values, right? We talk about money and meaning. It's about how do you align your personal values with how you've invested your money. But everybody's values are different. You know, there are some people who feel very strongly about health and healthcare, and that is the answer to all social change, or education. Some people feel very strongly that education is the key driver in creating social and economic justice. And so because everyone brings a slightly different lens to the value equation, I think it can be tough to measure social impact. That being said, it doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And there are lots of efforts underway that are trying to create an apples-to-apples environment so that people can compare across social impact or social returns. Great examples out there include the Global Impact Investing Rating Service, which is run by B-Lab Corporation that many people know. There are great examples of where social impact is being measured. And I think one of the greatest developments that has happened in the last several years is you see the beginning of common language. So people would often talk about in this sector, well, we're creating jobs, which on its surface sounds like very simple, very straightforward, great. But what kind of job? Is it a living wage job? Is it a part-time job? Is it a job with benefits? Is it a job where the factory conditions are healthy for the people who work there? And so there are lots of different types of jobs. And as we think about creating social impact, we have to be really clear about our definitions when we say we're creating a job, what kind of job it is. So lots of challenges, but I think there's progress being made.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and the Calvert story with us today.
Thank you.